Me and my two brothers all live together. Not because of our extraordinary brother bond, but really just because we don't have much of a choice. There's James, the one who always called the shots around here. That would basically tell us what to do. He just feels this need to guide us, thinking that we are just like lost lambs in need of a shepherd. Then we have Jack. Oh boy. Jack is a bit of a loner. He is incredibly talented as an artist, but because of the way we grew up, no incentive was given to him. Unfortunately, we cannot make him believe in himself. He takes refuge in food, always eating when he's nervous, which is a lot of the time. Then there's me, Sam. I am what you would call the black sheep of the three of us. The talentless son. At least, that's what my parents always told me growing up. Why can't you be like James, they said. Even your brother Jack has more talent. You are just worthless. I got used to it at some point. I wasn't listening anymore. So we have been living together, the three of us in a tiny apartment. James is the only one working at the moment. Me and Jack are currently unemployed, so we are spending a lot of time at home. But the other day, I went for a coffee outside, and at the coffee shop table behind me, there was an old lady speaking on the phone. And because we were so close, I could hear the conversation. She was saying something about a bag she had received, and right after I had heard the words $250,000, I was intrigued. And could it be that that old lady had something worth that kind of money? Some time had passed, and finally the old lady had got up and left. I decided to follow her. How hard could it be to steal from her? I will not harm her, I just want whatever she has that's worth $250K. She lives in the outskirts of the city, near the woods, in a small cabin. I stayed outside observing, waiting for something to happen. But nothing, not even lights. So, I went home. When I arrived, my brothers were watching TV. I spoke with them about what I did in that day, and they got intrigued as well. $250K was set us for life. It was hard to say no to this, especially knowing that the lady lived in the woods. It'd be easy prey, but we promised to each other. No harm would come to the lady. We just wanted the prize. So next day, before the first sunlight, we went to the cabin and stalked the place. We waited around an hour and a half, and we saw the old lady leaving. We waited a while longer just to make sure that she was not coming back, and we left Jack outside on guard, hiding in the bushes. Me and James entered the cabin. The door was unlocked, which was weird, especially because the old lady was keeping something worth so much cash inside. While I am searching for valuables, James called me from the other room. I ran to him, and when I reached him, I saw in his hand small, shiny diamond rocks. Oh my God, I said. We hit the jackpot! Me and James are smiling to each other, already thinking how our lives will change after this find. We walk back to the cabin entrance, and we see Jack running in our direction. He looked scared. When he reached us, he said, "The old lady!" Well, what about the old lady, Jack? She left. We saw her. She's coming back. We need to go back inside. And so we rushed inside again and tried to hide as best we could. I was hiding in the closet of her bedroom when I started listening to footsteps approaching me. She was inside. My heart started beating faster and faster, thinking she could open the door at any second, when a noise from the kitchen was heard. She went out of the room, and I got relieved for just a second. But the noise was from one of my brothers. It had to be. I slowly walked out the bedroom door and peeked at the kitchen. I saw Jack and the old lady side by side, looking in our direction. Just standing there until the old lady said, "You two boys can come out now. Jack is here with me. Come and join us." Confused and nervous, I appeared in front of them. James was already there and asked, "What's happening, Jack?" The old lady then said, "Jack here is working with me. He searched for me. He wants to be an artist. A wish I will grant him. But every wish requires sacrifice. In this case, you two. What the hell are you talking about? I heard your conversation at the coffee shop, I said. She then answers, I wanted you to hear me, so I gave you something to make you follow me. Those are not diamonds. James looks at his hands, and the diamond rocks had turned into insects. Shocked and afraid at this point, we tried to walk away, but Jack had a gun in his hand. He pointed at us and said, Turn around and walk into the bedroom. Without a choice, we did what he said. We walked into the same bedroom where I was hiding before, but when we entered this time, the room was different. Very different. There was no bed or closet, just a table against the wall, and the floors and walls were covered in red. It was blood, like a butcher's room. We turned to Jack and pleaded to let us go, but it was too late. I hope you grant me my wish, witch. I just killed my only family. Yes, Jack. You did well. There's just one more sacrifice to be done.
The events of the story I am about to tell happened 2 years ago. It all started one night around 4 a.m. My husband woke up very suddenly. He was sweating and breathing heavily. I woke up and asked him if he was all right. He told me it was nothing. It must have been a nightmare. He told me to go back to sleep, so I did. After that night, I found my husband very distracted. There were times I would speak to him and he wouldn't answer. This went on for some time. I would ask him if everything was fine, but he wouldn't acknowledge the problem. Something was not right. The nightmares started happening more frequently. There were nights I knew he didn't want to sleep, so he stayed in bed with his eyes open, afraid of falling asleep, of whatever was haunting his dreams. I had enough, and I wanted to confront my husband. So this time I wasn't going to take "it's nothing" as an answer. Before I spoke with him, I did some research online about night terrors and nightmares, and I found a lot of interesting articles, and I came across some about sleep paralysis. I didn't know this was a thing and that there are so many studies and articles about this subject. Time had come to speak with my husband. He arrived home from work. I was already waiting for him, and I asked him to sit with me. I started telling him all about the nights he has been having, waking up, sweating, breathing heavily, and sometimes not sleeping at all. At first, he was trying to dodge this, but after a while, he finally acknowledged the problem. He started to explain everything that happened every time he fell asleep. He told me that every night, he would have this same nightmare, but it felt so real that he didn't want to admit it. He was scared about what it was. Every night, he saw 3 orbs of light, very bright, in the corner of the room, just floating there, until a voice would come from the orbs, whispering the words, "It's time." This nightmare had been happening every night for some time already. I told him he needed to see a specialist, a doctor, that he needed to speak with someone about this and needed professional help, but my husband was stubborn. He thought this matter couldn't be solved by anybody but himself. He was trying to brush it off, saying that time would solve this problem. Everything was going to be fine. I knew his words weren't true. I knew my husband. I knew he was scared and once again trying to evade the matter. Another night came, both of us in bed. This night he was really trying to sleep, but this night wasn't like the others. He still woke up, but this time he was screaming like a madman. That made me scared as well, but I tried to comfort him. We went into the kitchen. I made us tea, and we sat down. I tried to speak to him, but for the first time in many years, I saw my husband crying, a complete meltdown. Again, I tried to comfort him, but my words weren't going to do anything. I told him the next day that we were going to see a psychiatrist. I wasn't giving my husband any more choices, and he finally agreed. The next day we arrived at the doctor's office and I waited outside. After an hour he came out and I looked at him and saw him smiling for the first time in a very long time. He looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, and I was happy and hopeful. The doctor prescribed some sleeping pills, but he had to continue with weekly consultations, at least for the time being. Things did get better for a while. The nightmares had stopped, and we could finally sleep normally again. Or so I thought. How wrong was I? One night, again around 4 a.m., I woke up and I realized my husband wasn't in bed. I called for him, but no answer. I got up, went into the kitchen, and from the window I could see lights outside. 3 lights to be exact. I rushed outside, and I saw my husband standing still in front of the 3 orbs. Their shining light was blinding me. It was getting harder to see. They were just so bright. I tried to call for my husband, but he wasn't listening. I tried to walk to him, but something was pushing me back. I tried to scream, but no voice came out. All of a sudden, a whisper came from the orbs saying, "It's time." Was this the nightmare my husband was having? Was I dreaming? Then the 3 orbs stopped shining and 3 silhouettes appeared. It got dark quickly and I couldn't understand what these things were. They didn't look like people. Their heads were too big and their bodies were too small and very slim. From behind them in the sky, a beam of light shone on the figures and my husband. And as quickly as the beam came, it quickly disappeared. And so did my husband.
I was home with my wife and son, watching a movie. I remember it being in animation, since our son loved cartoons. He never got tired of watching them. Me and my wife, a few years ago, found out we couldn't have kids of our own, so we went for adoption. We really wanted to have kids, and that seemed like a good idea. A lot of kids are born and have no families that can take care of them. So we went on with it. Our son Jack was adopted 2 years ago. He was 8 when we saw him. It was love at first sight. He behaves extremely well and is highly intelligent. The perfect son. But today I am here to talk about my wife and what lately has been happening around the house. Very strange things have been happening. Some people may think me crazy, but you will be the judge of that. It was a normal weekday. I was awoken. My wife had already left for work. It wasn't normal for her to go before me, but I didn't care and just carried on. As I leave my bedroom, already dressed and preparing to go downstairs, I slipped on the first stairs step, but I quickly managed to grab myself into the railing, preventing what could have been a very hurtful fall. I didn't understand why the stairs had been waxed, but the funny thing was, it was only the first 3 or 4 steps. I could feel the difference on the remaining steps. Maybe it was nothing. And still needed to get breakfast and go to work, so I did. I didn't tell my wife anything about the stairs incident, and a few days had passed. I was home having a bath in the tub. To better explain what happened, I need to tell you how the spacing in my bathroom is organised. On top of the tub, near the shower, there is a small shelf where we keep shampoos and other related things. On this day, while I was in the tub, I saw a screwdriver falling in, and I got alerted and looked at the shelf. My heart almost stopped beating when I could see that the blow dryer was on that shelf. It's never there, but today it was. And not only that, but it was connected to the power. I start getting up when I see the shelf leaning towards the tub, and it falls inside the tub, creating an immediate short circuit. Luckily I got out of the tub, but almost died of a heart attack after. How close to dying was I? This couldn't be a mistake. I spoke with my wife later about this, but she didn't really remember putting the dryer there, and much less connected to the plug. Well, it can happen, but I was still suspicious of my wife. She had been acting strange lately, going to work earlier than me and always coming later. Maybe I was just paranoid. To ease my suspicions, I decided to start following my wife after her work. I knew she was going somewhere else, after work. I just needed to find out. I had a very bad feeling. The day I decided to follow her, my suspicions were confirmed. After work, I saw her entering a motel room. I stayed outside, waiting to see if someone was entering, but for 1 hour, no one entered or left. I stayed a while longer, and 5 minutes after, I see a man coming out of the room. My suspicions were confirmed. I felt devastated. I believed now she was trying to kill me and get me out of the picture. I couldn't believe it. But I needed to calm myself down before going home. When I arrived home, I went directly to my wife and confronted her with what I had seen. She denied she was having any affair. I told her I saw her, but it didn't matter. We had a huge fight until someone stabbed her in the back. The blood splashed across my face. Time froze. I saw her falling into the ground, and behind her was Jack, our son, with a bloody knife in his hand and a smile on his face. I screamed to him, "What have you done?" He calmly answered, "I did what I have been doing for the last 25 years. But you're just a child." He calmly got closer to me and said, "That's what I wanted you to think," and smiled before stabbing me. This is my story.
My name is John, and I'm going to share a terrifying experience that happened to me. I'm currently working in a coffee shop located in a small town. What I liked about it was the fact that I didn't have to deal with a lot of people, and all the clients that came to our coffee shop, well, I knew them. I was comfortable. But my favorite part of the day was when night came. I have always been nocturnal. I loved watching horror movies or scary YouTube videos in the dark. It made me feel scared, but I loved that feeling. After watching these scary videos, I would look at the corner of my room under the bed, wondering if something was lurking in the dark. One night, I remember it was raining. I was in my bed ready to go to sleep. Just another normal night. I shut down the light, get underneath the sheets, and closed my eyes. A few minutes had passed when I started listening to a distorted voice. It was calling my name. John. It wasn't very loud, but I could hear it clearly calling to me. I turned on the light, but I couldn't see anyone. I checked slowly under the bed, but there was nothing there either. I calmed myself and thought that maybe I was imagining things. I did see a lot of scary stuff before going to sleep. I was scared, but I saw nothing anywhere, so I just closed my eyes again and eventually fell asleep. On that same night, I woke up around 4 a.m. I was hearing a stomping noise coming from outside my room. I could clearly hear it, because I slept with my bedroom door open. I got up and went outside to check the corridor. I looked in both directions, but I couldn't see anything. Until the distorted voice called my name. John. It said. This was not my imagination. Someone was calling me. Afraid, I asked, "Is someone there?" No reply back. I started walking into the kitchen, which was right at the end of the corridor. When I arrived there, I immediately turned on the lights, and still, no one was in sight. I kept walking to the kitchen counter, and I took a knife from the holder. As I picked the knife up, the same voice, distorted, said, "That won't help you." I screamed and ran up to my bedroom. As I'm going for the phone, I felt something grabbing me from behind. I couldn't move. I didn't see anyone, but some kind of force was holding me, until it threw me with my back against the wall, knocking me out as I hit the floor. When I woke up, it was morning already. Confused and scared, I didn't understand what had happened. I didn't see anyone inside my house, but something threw me against the wall. I was sure of that. My head was hurting from hitting the wall. I wanted to call the cops, but I was not sure what to tell them. I didn't see anyone after all. I tried to forget this for now and prepared to get myself back to work before I got fired. And so I did. At the end of the day, I honestly was afraid to go back to my house. I was afraid whatever happened last night could end up happening again. But I had nowhere else to go. When I arrived home, I ate, watched some TV, nothing scary, quite the opposite actually. I tried to see something more cheerful. I needed something to distract me. When time came to go to sleep, I entered my bed still scared for what had happened the previous night. I went under the sheets and closed my eyes. A few minutes had passed when I felt something pulling on me from the bed into the air. This time, I was struggling to breathe. I was trying to free myself, and I couldn't see anyone inside the room. Yes, it was dark, but I could feel hands grabbing me. It was like a force pulling me. Then a voice. That same distorted voice. "Get out of my house." As it finished saying these words, I fell into the bed. With my heart racing in a full panic attack, I left the house running, never looking back. I went to my best friend's house. When he answered the door, he asked me if I was okay, but the only thing I could ask was, "Can I stay with you?" He obviously said yes, and I slept on his bedroom floor. I couldn't be alone. I was still terrified, and I just couldn't fall asleep. But eventually I did. But just for a couple hours. The next day we spoke, and I explained to him what happened. He was in shock as well. Needless to say, I didn't go back to that house. Currently, I'm living with my friend until I can find another place of my own. I just don't know if I can ever go back to that place and be alone again.
Christmas is coming, and I'm not very excited with this year's celebrations. Due to the recent death of my mother, there has been trouble amongst us. When I say us, I mean my brothers and I. There are 4 of us in total. I am the baby sister, as they say. I never had much of a say around here, and growing up with 3 brothers was not an easy task. As I said before, our family's going through a lot of trouble right now, and the problem is money. Since our mother died, my brothers and I can't reach an understanding with the family money. You see, my mother was very rich. She had several houses, cars, loaded bank accounts, even a jet. I never cared about it. I always wanted to do something by myself, not using the family's money to reach places. There was no meaning to that. My brothers, on the other hand, they would use and abuse their power. I hated that. But I didn't hate them. I felt that they were becoming different people. Slowly, all that money can't be good. I could have sworn at times that the 3 of them were conspiring. Don't know about what, but they were always together. Growing up, people told me that they could be bullies to others sometimes. After the death of our mother, Tiago gave the idea of spending Christmas night at our mother's country clubhouse. More like a mansion. He said it would be nice to be all together. We could discuss in more detail how to divide the family estate. When Tiago proposed this, I said yes, of course. They were my only family, so I wanted to spend Christmas with them. But the strange thing was, my brothers never let me into any of the family decisions. Ever. This felt strange to me and got me thinking about things. Darker things. Our mother had died during her sleep of natural causes, but she wasn't that old. It had come as a big shock to me. Her passing was very unexpected. She was always healthy. She took good care of herself and, like me, she didn't flash her money around. All the family's estate and money had come from previous generations. All this was inherited. My brothers loved the money. Could it be that they wanted my mother out of the way so they could get everything for themselves? Are they inviting me to get rid of me as well? I have the darkest thoughts crossing my mind right now. I have no way of facing my 3 brothers. I don't even have proof, but like I said before, they have been scheming together lately, even more than usual. This may not be a coincidence. I don't know what to do right now, but I need to know for sure what happened to my poor mother. I managed to get my hands on the autopsy report, which, not surprisingly, said death by natural causes. But a report can be forged. People can be bought. So this could all be fake. I contacted the medical examiner that performed the autopsy. He said the same things that were written in the report. I offered him money and asked him if my brothers had contacted him as well. I felt that he was hiding something from me, but he said nothing and just repeated, "It's all in the report. Don't contact me again." I was now even more suspicious of my brothers. I was sure they had something to do with this. Christmas night came and I prepared myself to go have dinner with them. But I wasn't going to go there without some kind of protection. Whatever they did to my mother, they were going to do to me. So I took in my wallet my 9mm pistol, just in case. Wasn't even sure I would have the guts to use it. I arrived at our home, and my brothers were standing near the table. I say hello to everyone, and we all sit down. Usually, for any occasion, a catering service was hired. But this time, my older brother decided to cook. That was very strange. I had never seen him cooking in my life. I'm waiting for them to take a bite. I need to make sure I'm not going to be poisoned. They start eating and drinking wine. I don't drink alcohol, so I stay with the water. They can make their move at any second. I start eating, and I'm sure the food is good, but all of a sudden, my brothers start coughing. Faster and faster, like they're choking. And one by one, they start dropping their heads into their plates. In shock, and knowing what the hell happened, I got up and I scream at them. Are they joking with me? Are they pranking me? From the shadows, in the corner of the room, I see a figure. It's approaching me. Slowly, I start figuring out who this is. It's my mother. She's alive. She comes closer to me. She smiles and says, "I knew you didn't drink wine, my beautiful daughter."
Till this day, I always thought I'd seen everything, all types of evil, but I was wrong, very wrong. Me and my brother did 2 high-paid jobs, but they were very risky. And on the 3rd job, the police arrived too early in the bank, so we had to run. While on the run, my brother got shot in the leg, but I still managed to put him in the car, and we ran. I stooped in some secondary road near the woods and patched his wound the best I could, but still, he needed some real medical attention. He could lose his leg. Problem was, my car was without gas, and the police were now hunting us, but it was too risky to go on the main roads. We didn't have any other options, so we tried to hide in the car in some bushes. I told my brother to hang tight because I was going to get help, even if I had to kidnap a doctor. I followed a track I found in the woods and kept going. An hour passed by and I saw a small cabin. It wasn't too big. It was only 1 floor, at least from the outside. I watched it behind some bushes and scouted the place. I could see that smoke was coming from the cabin chimney. Maybe someone was there. I took my gun out and silently approached the cabin's door. I couldn't hear any noises from the inside, so I slowly checked the door handle, and it was unlocked. I opened. The cabin was empty, and I entered, and I could see that whoever was living here full time. The place had everything you needed to live. On the other side, I could see a set of stairs going down, so I approached it, slowly, and I slowly reached the bottom. The basement was nothing like the upstairs. It looked trashed and abandoned, and there was a rotten smell, and I didn't know what it was. Maybe a dead animal. There was a table with a few knives and some blood. Maybe this was a hunter's cabin. I didn't want to lose time. My brother needed me. I had to be quick and check if there was something here that could help us. I walked a little bit further, and in the corner of the room, I saw something that terrified me. A man, old and wrinkly, chained to the corner, staring at me. I was shocked. Whoever owned this place had this poor man locked up here like an animal. I looked around to find something to release him, but I didn't see anything that was useful. Maybe there was a key to his chains upstairs, so I quickly went up the stairs looking for a key, and when I reached the top, I stopped. Someone was approaching me from the cabin's door, and I could hear the steps on the wood. A man entered the cabin, carrying a black bag on his shoulder, and as soon as he entered, he started walking in my direction. He was coming downstairs, and I tried to move downstairs again and hide. I found a small broken closet. It was not fully against the wall, so I could stay behind it, and it had a few holes, so I could peek at that guy. The man came downstairs, still with the bag on his shoulder. He walked to the table and dropped the bag there. Now that we were closer, I could see the shape of the bag. It looked like it had a person inside it. My heart was racing. I was a man that did some time in prison. I wasn't easily scared, but I was deadly afraid. I needed to know what was in that bag. I firmly gripped my gun and approached silently behind the man and told him with a firm voice to turn around. The guy didn't move. He just stood there. So I told him again to turn around or I'd blow his brains out. The man slightly moved his head to the side and said, "Took you some time to come out." "What?" I said. He knew I was hiding? I told him to move aside and show me what he had inside the bag. He said I wouldn't like to see it, and that it was time for that old man to eat. If he goes too long without eating, he would get upset. Very upset. He kept saying the old man had to eat, so I moved to the side to see what was inside the bag, and when I saw it, my heart fell, my body froze, and tears came down my eyes. There was a man inside the bag. My brother. I felt enraged as I turned around and pointed the gun at the man. But it was too late.
My name is Peter, and recently I moved into a 2-bedroom condo with another guy named Marco. Unfortunately, I couldn't afford living on my own, so I had to take this opportunity. The rent was cheap and Marco was a nice guy. We spent some time together, watching movies, playing video games, and just hanging out, basically. We had similar tastes, so we had fun. One day, I was home alone. Marco had gone out on a beer run, so I was just chilling, watching Netflix on the couch. As I was watching, I heard a noise coming from under the door. I looked at it, and I saw a paper or an envelope of some kind being slipped through under the door. Could it be the mailman? But it was so late in the evening. No, it couldn't be. I got up, went to the door, and asked if someone was there. Slowly, I opened it, but I didn't see anyone, just an empty corridor. I went back inside, picked up the envelope, and opened it. Inside, I found a paper with the words, "Your roommate is a killer." What? Who gave me this paper? At first, I thought it could be a joke from my roommate, but I was afraid this wasn't a prank. I waited for Marco to arrive home. He came around 15 minutes after I received the envelope. I decided not to say anything to him. I wanted to make sure whoever wrote that note had made a mistake. But once he saw me, he asked if I was okay. He said I looked as if I had seen a ghost. I told him I was fine and that I'd just seen something scary on the television. Night continued as usual. We drank some beer, played some games, but I was paying close attention to Marco. I couldn't tell if he was the one responsible for the paper note. The next day came, and I prepared myself to go to work. By the way, I forgot to mention what I do for a living. I work from home most of the time, for a marketing agency, but sometimes we have to meet at a local office. It's fine. Working from home gives me the freedom I want to do other things. So today was office day. I couldn't stop thinking about that note I received the previous day. I mean, it was hard to believe that what was written on the paper was true. Marco is a software engineer and works in an office downtown. He is what you would call a geek, a very nice guy, always helpful. I just couldn't believe it. Later that night, me and Marco are hanging out on the couch, and I had already forgotten about the paper. We were having fun until Marco said he had to go to sleep, as he had an early meeting with his boss in the morning. So he went to sleep, and I stayed watching a movie. While I watched the movie, again, around the same time as the previous night, I heard another envelope being slipped through under the door. This time, I ran fast to the door and opened it. But no one was there. I looked down and saw the envelope. I picked it up and read the note inside. It said, "You need to leave that house. He will kill you." This had gone on for too long. I waited for the next day to come. I still didn't say anything to Marco. Now I was sure it wasn't him. He was sleeping at the time the note was delivered. I had to go out to do some errands, so I was only going to come home later. When I arrived home, Marco was cooking. I entered, said hello. I was a little anxious. Marco could see it, and he asked me if I was all right. I responded, "Yes, I'm fine. Just a little tired." As I said this, Another envelope came under the door. This time, Marco saw it and went to the door, finding it odd that mail was coming at this time. At the same time, I tried to pick up the note before Marco, but he got it first. He opened it and read it. I asked him, "What does it say?" He made a nervous face and showed me the note. It said, "He killed his last roommate." Marco was petrified, looking at me. I looked back at him. Marco was unable to move. Feeling paralyzed, I could see the fear on his face. I told him, in a very calm voice, "Someone knows my secret. And now so do you." And I smiled.
I still don't know what exactly happened or why. It took place a few years ago, in 2013. I was home alone. Although my parents went out often, and I usually stayed home by myself and played video games, I never really felt alone. My friend Thomas lived right next door, and if you looked out my bedroom window, which was on the second floor, you could see right into his. It was awesome. We played video games together online most of the time, and the night it happened was no different. It was Saturday, and with my parents gone, I had planned to play video games all night. We were in the middle of a match when Thomas told me he would be right back. That was normal, of course, but after 10 minutes, I stood up and looked out my window. Right then, I saw him walk back into his bedroom and put his headset back on. I asked him what took so long, and he said that he thought he heard his back door open and then close. I asked if his parents were home, and he said no, that he was home alone too. We went back to playing when about 30 minutes later, I heard something downstairs, in my house. It was really late at this time, and Thomas said he was going to bed. I turned off my console and walked out of my bedroom to go downstairs. I stopped halfway down the stairs. I could see the faint shadow of someone sitting in the chair in the living room. They were facing away from me. I was about to speak out, but then realized it wasn't my mom or my dad. I went back up the stairs as slowly and silently as I possibly could, never taking my eyes off the person. When I reached the top, I silently moved back into my bedroom a few feet away. I grabbed my cell phone and hit the green messaging icon on the screen. At that moment, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Completely terrified, I got in my bed and pulled the covers over my head, hoping and praying whoever it was would think nobody was home. I tried to lay as flat as possible and control my breathing. I heard nothing after that. I stayed under the covers without moving for a long time. I felt like someone was watching me. I eventually pulled my cell phone up and texted my parents. I didn't get the immediate response that I wanted, so I decided to text Thomas. I typed one word and then heard the hardwood floor in my bedroom creak. I froze. You have no idea how bad I wanted to look to see if someone was standing in my bedroom, but at the same time, too terrified to do it. I ended up laying there under the covers for at least an hour before finally getting a text. I was scared to move, but a minute later, I opened it. It was from Thomas. I felt all the blood rush out of my face, and I started to shake. The text read, "Who is that in your bedroom?" I ripped the covers off my head out of pure adrenaline and fear. There was nobody there.
I am part of a Black Operations Special Forces team. We are only called in last resort, when all other choices have failed. Headquarters called us in to receive the briefing. Our next mission was going to be only for reconnaissance. A small team with the best 3 men would go in, observe, and report. I will refer to me and my team's operatives by our code names. We were Victor, the sniper, Olympic, the spotter, and me, Cool Breeze, the team leader. We set out in our mission. We arrived at the area where the subject had last been seen. It was a forest area, deep inside the country. But there were some abandoned buildings, lots of places for someone to hide. We needed to proceed with caution. Olympic and Victor started searching for the subject. We established ourselves in a bush area, and we had plenty of natural cover, so we waited to see movement. A few minutes go by, and Olympic spotted something in one of the abandoned buildings. I contacted headquarters and told them we had eyes on someone in a window of the 3rd floor. Headquarters replied with new orders. We were told to engage the subject. According to the HQ, the subject was the only person in the building, and they had satellite confirmation. I told Victor to prepare himself for a shot. We were still far away from the target, but I knew I had in my team one of the best snipers in the world. Olympic determined the distance of the target was around 1,538 yards. When Victor confirmed he had the target in his scope, I gave the order for the shot. Olympic kept the binoculars on target to confirm the shot. Victor fired. Olympic confirmed the shot was successful, but the bullet had bounced off the target's head. I asked if he was sure, but Victor also confirmed. Then the target moved out of sight inside the building. That's when I made the decision that I was going in. We started moving through the forest, always trying to stay in the cover of the bushes and trees. We arrived at the building after a few minutes, and this was the last place we saw the target. I signaled to Olympic to go in first and take point. We followed. It was a little dark inside, but not enough for night vision, and we didn't want to use flashlights to reveal our position. We moved silently through the building's corridors. We went to the 2nd floor. Once we got upstairs, I entered another corridor. On this corridor, we saw something not a lot of people could withstand, even for us. We saw 2 bodies of what looked like civilians. They looked like they were half-eaten, and I cannot describe the smell. It was very disturbing, but we had a job to do, and we couldn't panic. I told Victor to take point and continue ahead. We followed. As we walked the corridor, a sudden scream from Olympic comes from the back. Victor and I looked back and saw him being dragged to the depths of the corridor in less than a second. We ran after him to try and save him. Weapons pointing ahead. When we started to reach the end of the corridor, we saw Olympic's body lying on the ground in a pool of blood. I called headquarters and told them we had an operative down and that someone was hunting us. There was no response from headquarters. I tried several times, but nothing. We were on our own. I turned around to see Victor, and I saw him being choked by something I could not describe. This thing wasn't human. I don't know what it was. He was green-colored, had a tail, what looked like an exoskeleton. And that's why the bullet had bounced off its head. I was paralyzed for a few seconds. I saw a lot of things in my life, but this was something new. I recovered my senses and started shooting at this thing. The bullets weren't doing anything. They just bounced off its skin. It wasn't even paying attention to me until something came out of its arm, and with it, it stabbed Victor. I panicked and started running as fast as I could. I entered a room and closed the door. I turned my back to the door. I then turned around and had my gun pointed at the door. I couldn't do anything at this point other than wait. I was trapped in this room. The window was too high for me to jump, and my only choice was taking this thing down. So I waited. The creature is at the door, trying to break it. I tightened my grip on my gun. I am ready. Well, the test was a success. You can tell Mr. President that the specimen is battle ready. We have 3 ready to go.
I have been having a constant nightmare. Every night I wake up and cannot move. The only thing I can move is my eyes. Every time I try to move my arms, nothing happens. Slowly, from the corner of my room, a shadow appears. Slowly, it starts becoming visible until I can see it perfectly. It's a man with a mask. I want to run and scream, but I cannot move. The masked man slowly approaches my bed and stands there watching me. So I close my eyes again and cry myself to sleep. The next day, I decided to go online and do some research. I can't be the only one suffering from these terrible nightmares. After some time researching, I found out that this happens to other people as well. They call it sleep paralysis. It doesn't help the fact that I always like watching horror movies or scary stories on YouTube. I read online that if you watch scary things before going to bed, it can be nightmare fuel. I tried one night not watching nothing scary before going to bed. I still feared the moment I closed my eyes and tried to fall asleep. Again, like a clock, I wake up in the middle of the night, not being able to move. I looked to the corner and he appeared as usual, but he got closer and sat down on the bed next to me. I was terrified. I wanted to scream but couldn't. He started rubbing my arm with his hand. I tried to move my hand, but nothing again. With my heart racing, I closed my eyes and tried to cry myself asleep. I couldn't feel my body. Slowly, I started blacking out. I woke up the next morning, broken and destroyed from the previous night. Another night has passed, and things were getting worse. Every time this nightmare happened, the masked man was getting closer and closer to me. As I was walking to my kitchen, I sat down at the table to watch some TV. I turned on the news, and what I saw sent chills through my body. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. Police had caught a serial killer that was targeting people in their sleep. The man would stalk his victims while they're sleeping, inject them with a paralyzing agent so the victims couldn't move, and then he would toy with them for days. Sometimes he wouldn't even interact with the victims. But the bigger problem here was that the killer was using the same mask of the man in my nightmares. Coincidence or not, I never had sleep paralysis ever again.
My name is John Collins, and I am a 74-year-old primary school teacher. The reason I still teach is simple, because I love it. I don't intend to stay home without working, just waiting until it's over. I teach in a very small town in the interior of the country. Currently, I teach a small group of just 6 students. Our numbers were so little because everyone is moving to bigger cities or places near the coast. I like it here. I don't have close relatives, but I do have my work, and that's all that I need. But last week, something very strange started to happen. On a normal day, I enter the classroom earlier than my students so I can prepare the lesson. After that, they show up. But last week, as my students were entering the room, one of them stood at the door. I looked at him and told him to come in, which he had no reaction to. So I told him again. This time I raised my voice. Still no reaction. As I was looking at him, I could swear his eyes became fully black for a second. I was surprised, but then they were normal again. He then said, "Sorry, Mr. Collins," and he entered the room. No more incidents happened that day, and the lessons carried on. But it didn't end there. 2 days later, in the middle of class, I had my back turned to my students while writing on the board. When I turned around, I saw my students staring at me. And this time, all of their eyes were black, like a demon. I looked around and they stared at me, no blinking, no movement. I was petrified, not being able to understand the situation. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath until one of the kids asked me, "Are you okay, Mr. Collins?" I opened my eyes and they were all normal again. Relief came over me and I thanked God that the bell rang and everyone went home. For a few days, things were back to normal again, but yesterday, something happened that chilled my bones. As I was teaching my lesson, again, facing with my back to the students and writing on the board, I turned around. Not only were all of their eyes black, but they were standing and pointing at me. I saw their mouths moving, like they were mumbling something, but I didn't understand what. Slowly, their mumbles became louder, and I started to understand what they were saying. In perfect unison, they were saying, "It's your fault. It's your fault." I had absolutely no reaction. They just stood there and just continued to say that it was my fault. I started feeling my body failing. I closed my eyes and started sweating. My body was weak, and then, in that same instance, I was transported somehow to a white room with someone in front of me. I couldn't move. I was wearing a white vest and sitting in a chair. The man in front of me said, "Mr. Collins, you had another episode. We might have to increase your medication." "Medication?" I said. "Where are my students? I was in my classroom. How did I get here?" "Mr. Collins, we've been here for the last 20 years. There are no students anymore. They all died in that fire. You blame yourself for not saving them, but it was not your fault. Mr. Collins, I don't want to have to sedate you. Please calm down. Bring the sedative." "I'm sorry, Mr. Collins. We have no other alternative. You are a danger to yourself and other patients. We will have to keep you sedated and isolated from the others. I'm very sorry."
Ever since I was younger, I've heard people call my name, whether it be somewhere rural or in my home. It's constantly happened, and it's starting to freak me out. Let me give you a bit of context. I am a 17-year-old female. I live in Florida and have always been aware of my Native American culture, even though I'm not of that heritage myself. This all started when I was very young. The first instance of this happening was when I was living with my grandmother. Her and I were very close. I was wide awake in bed, unable to sleep with her to my right. There's no doubt in my mind that she was deeply asleep, only a few inches from me. Every television in the house was off, and the only other person in the house was my grandfather asleep in his room. Then very clearly and loudly I heard my grandmother call me from the kitchen. Almost how you'd call someone for dinner. I know it's common to hear your name being called mistakenly, but I did more research on this as a teen, and apparently when you hear your name being called this loud, you're supposed to reject it. Not knowing this, I just huddled closer to my grandmother and kept my eyes locked on the open door. The second instance was around 13 or 14 when my father took me on a trip to Las Vegas. We visited some part of the Grand Canyon, and while my family were waiting in line for a skywalk bridge, we paid for a tour. I wandered around the edge a good distance away from my family, and decided to yell my name into the canyon to hear my echo. When it came back to me, it sounded distorted, almost like my grandmother had yelled my name back. It might have not been my grandmother, but it was very similar. Nonetheless, just the fact that it was distorted was enough to scare me a little. I don't put much weight into this experience, as it could have just been my own voice coming back weirdly. The next event happened when I was 13. It was the most terrifying one I've ever had. This is the closest I've ever been to whatever this thing is, and proves my point that it's mimicking people. I was on a vacation with my family in Key West, and had rented a home. I invited my best friend, called Ash, to stay with us. On the third day, we decided to skip out on a boating trip and mooch off the house owner's Netflix all day. At about the 5th episode of whatever we were watching, we decided on a snack refill and bathroom break. We paused the television and make our way to the kitchen. I believe that Ash had followed me into the kitchen and leaned on the island while I prepared some chips with my back turned to her. I held a full-on conversation with whatever the thing was and even looked back at her on the phone. I fully had no doubt in my mind I was talking and looking at Ash on her phone. She even held it in this specific way that Ash does. I turned my back for a split second to pick up the bowls and suggested we head back to the couch, when I see Ash, or the real Ash anyway, walk out the bathroom, which was a solid 30 feet away. My body immediately went cold, and the first thing I asked her was how she got to the bathroom in and out without me hearing. She gave me the strangest look and told me she's been in there the whole time since we got up. This is where I start freaking out and insist that I had just been talking to her and even physically saw her. She joked about doppelgangers and how she was going to die. I quickly suggested we get out of the house and walk around the neighborhood. She then informed me she had gotten her period while she was in the bathroom, at the same time I was talking to whatever it was. We walked around until my mum called me that she was back in the house. We're still best friends to this day and have been for 11 years. And I've asked her about it, and she said she didn't even hear me speaking with anyone at all. Now at this point you might think I'm crazy, but for this next one I have witnesses. I was on a vacation near the Great Smoky Mountains, just a little west in Surreyville, Tennessee. We had our previous reservations cancelled, so we took this little rundown cabin owned by a local woman. Now we got there late at night, and during the moment we all stepped out the car, the first thing we heard was a man's voice, "Hey neighbors," coming from one of the cabins to our left, that was higher up on the mountain than we were. We couldn't see the cabin really, just a road that led further up, and we all assumed he could see us, but we not him. Probably some guy on his balcony, we thought. My friendly stepdad yelled, "Hey," and waved up towards the direction the sound came from. It wouldn't have been weird if this didn't happen every time we stepped out the cabin or car. My family completely wrote it off as some type of hospitality we were not used to in Miami. Retelling it, my brother and my friends agreed it was weird. I did hear constant footsteps around the cabin at night and some outside my window. But I didn't give it much thought since wildlife is a thing in the woods. Just something I thought I should mention. The thing that really propelled me into researching what the hell was happening to me was when I was having a photo shoot in the woods behind the cabin, and both my brother, sister, and I heard something calling my name deeper in the woods. Since I was with my younger siblings, I went into a full big sister protection mode and almost threw them back down the little slope we had to climb to get to the woods. We were all crapping ourselves from how clear it was and how we all pinpointed it was coming from the deeper woods and nowhere near the cabin. This was during the day, and we were all so thrown by this that we stayed in for the rest of the trip. We all agreed it was a woman's voice, and the first thing I asked my mum when we went outside was, "Did you call me?" She had been lounging in her room with my stepdad all day, trusting that I could take care of the younger ones just outside the cabin. She saw how freaked out the kids were, and we didn't really go outside at night for the rest of our trip. I think I reacted to this quite badly, because I had kids to take care of and I can tell that they were terrified out there. The voice sounded like someone was looking for me or calling me back somewhere. With no knowledge of what this could have been, I finally decided to look into things when I turned 17. I had no previous knowledge of Wendigos or skinwalkers or anything cryptic, only ghost investigation shows. I'm desperate for answers, because at this point I'm constantly thinking about it and driving myself into rabbit holes of information, myths, and legends.
My name is Matilda. I'm 13 years old. I live with my parents in a big house. Can't complain. We have everything a young teenage girl could possibly want. But even with everything, I don't know what it is to feel, to smile. Still, the only thing I want is to be happy, to be able to smile. For so long I have been showered with gifts by my parents. They don't understand how unhappy I am. I don't think they even care, as long as I don't complain. Everything is just fine. I tried everything to be able to feel something. Every day I helped the old lady that lives around the corner across the street. I gave money to homeless people with nothing to eat. I went to church every single Sunday morning. Nothing makes me feel. Why can't I just feel like everyone else? My parents are too busy doing their own things to understand how I feel. They are happy all the time, always smiling, always in a good mood. In school, I see other kids making fun of me. I don't care. I would at least prefer to feel something, even if it was humiliation, but nothing. I see the parents picking their kids up from school every day. Everyone's happy to see each other. My parents also pick me up, but when I see them, I feel nothing. No happiness, sadness, just a vacuum inside me. Maybe this is who I am supposed to be, a vessel of nothingness, cursed to walk until I die, without the basic understanding of life. Maybe one day, I will see it by myself, what it is to feel. Another day, another cursed day, where I'm doing the same things. Getting up, going to school, come back, meet my parents, go to sleep. Is there something else I can do today? Something I haven't tried before? I'm walking in the street. The old lady that I always help is in front of me. I always help her cross the street, in search of that feeling, that smile. I stood behind her. Did I do something different? Why didn't I offer her my help? Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Doesn't matter what I do. But maybe I can do something different today.
I was on my way to a work event. I always enjoy driving at night, even longer trips. There's almost no traffic at night, and I can enjoy the silence that comes with it. This particular night, after around 2 hours, I wasn't feeling so good as usual, so I tried to find a place to sleep for a couple of hours to get back on the road. Finally, I found a small hotel. Nothing special from the outside, but it didn't really matter. As I got near the place, I saw that it looked abandoned. No cars in the parking lot, no lights, except the welcoming banner at the entrance. I parked my car and made my way to the front desk. The place looked shady. Definitely something was going on around here. On the way, I saw a guy sleeping on the ground against the wall. He was in the seated position, so I guessed that he was okay. In the next room, a lady smoking a cigarette at the window. She stared at me as I walked. I was really tired and I needed those couple of hours of rest. I entered the reception area, and as I walked to the front desk, I was able to see the manager. He was a middle-aged man, greasy hair, a t-shirt full of stains. Not a very good sight. I walked towards the desk and asked for a room. "Do you have any rooms available?" "Yes," he answered. $40 for the night." I thanked him and paid. He gave me the key to room 8. I was very tired, so I just went to my room and just crashed on the bed. Didn't even take my clothes off. I just wanted to sleep. I woke up 3 hours later feeling fresh and ready to get back on the road. But as I was about to get up, I looked to the other side of the bed, and what I saw made my body freeze. Never in my life was I so scared. There, in the bed at my side, the body of the woman who was smoking a cigarette in the window. I ran to the front desk to warn the manager to call the cops. On my way, I saw the guy that was sleeping against the wall on the ground. This time, though, he was lying down in a pool of blood. My heart was pumping so fast, but I didn't want to stick around. I needed to warn the manager. When I reached the front desk, no one was there. I started calling for the manager out loud. I was in total panic. Then I heard a noise from the door to the left of the desk. I knocked on the door so hard and so fast, asking for help, but from the other side, someone, I didn't know who, but I thought it was the manager, I heard, "Go away. I called the cops. They're on their way." I said, "Thank God, I saw 2 bodies outside. Someone killed those people." The guy didn't say anything, but it didn't matter, as I started hearing the police sirens. I went outside and started waving at the cops, and then the manager ran up behind me and started screaming, It's him! It's him! He killed those people!" I was shocked. What was he saying? I didn't kill anyone. I was asleep. The police didn't care and took me inside the car and locked me up. Meanwhile, they went inside to talk to the manager. It turns out that he locked himself in the toilet after watching me killing those people. The video was shown to me by the detective. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I didn't remember doing this. I was just on my way to a work event. I was convicted, and now I'm serving my time in a psychiatric institution. The doctor told me that this was not my first time. I've been doing this for some years now. And now that I started remembering, I enjoyed it.
I experienced sleep paralysis twice in my life so far. I will share both stories. I'm turning 22 this year. My first experience happened during the summer of 2015, and it was downright terrifying. It was before my senior year in high school. I've been watching horror stories on YouTube, which at the time was very cool and a popular thing. I came across a video of a horror narrator named Lazy Masquerade called 8 True Terrifying Sleep Paralysis Stories. I thought to myself, sleep paralysis? What the hell is that? Anyways, less than a week later, I experienced it. I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning. I was laying on my back. I couldn't move. All I could move were my eyes. All of a sudden, I saw a tall, dark figure. It looked like a man wearing a black hoodie with his hood up. He looked to be about 6'4", 250 pounds. Yeah, 6'4", 250. It sounds cliche, I know. I couldn't see his face, but he was looking down at me. This probably lasted about 2 minutes, but I was laying there thinking this man was going to slice my throat at any second. That's pretty much all I remember from that experience. Kind of ironic how shortly after watching a video on sleep paralysis stories, I experienced it. That was almost 5 years ago. And recently I had another experience. I had woken up a lot earlier than usual because my older sister was visiting us and had my niece and nephew with her. I visited for a little bit and caught up with my family that doesn't live with us. My parents took them and my younger sister out for lunch. I didn't go because we wouldn't be back in time for me to get ready for work. So I decided to go back to sleep for 2 more hours, then get ready for work. I woke up and thought I heard footsteps and a girl laughing. It wasn't my mom or my sisters. It didn't sound like a girl that I knew. I was laying on my back with my head turned facing the wall next to my bed, but also facing my window. I could see my cat sitting on my futon, staring at the corner of the room where my door was. Then I realized I couldn't move. I tried. I was completely paralyzed. I could only move my eyes. I only heard the laughing 3 times and the footsteps twice. It was coming from the hallway. My cat was staring intently at the corner I couldn't face, and I swear I felt like someone was in my room, which didn't make sense, because even if someone was in our house, my cat would hide. She doesn't like new people. This only lasted about 2 to 3 minutes. Next thing I remember, I could get up, and I got ready for work. I told my coworkers about it, and we kind of just laughed and joked about it. My supervisor even told me a story that happened to one of his friends, supposedly talking to Satan during a sleep paralysis experience. I told my family later that night when I got home. So yeah, those are 2 stories of my sleep paralysis experiences. It's weird how your mind plays scary tricks on you like that sometimes.
My name is Max. I'm 36. I recently got some time off from work and decided to go back home to try and spend some quality time with my father that I don't usually see. I invited him to go on a camping trip. It was going to be nice to have some time with him, fishing, hunting, and just overall chilling in some of the most beautiful forests of our country. The next day, I picked up my father and we hit the road. We had our camping equipment on the back of my truck. I was so excited. When we arrived at our camping spot, we just put the equipment down, unfolded the tent, and went on our first walk, just to check for hunting and fishing spots. We found a nice lake, so we decided to go back, pick up the fishing rods, and went back to the lake to try to get some fish for tonight's dinner. We stood there all afternoon, just fishing and sharing old stories. My father always enjoyed speaking, so most of the time, I just listened. He even remembered a story about an imaginary friend I had growing up. "What was his name?" my father asked. "His name was Josh," I said. "Yeah, that's it. You spent all the time talking to him." And then he proceeded to speak about other things. We already had some beers and managed to pick up some fish, so we went back to camp before nightfall came. We were around the fire, eating, drinking some more, and telling stories of the past to each other. In a moment of nostalgia, I said something that bothered him. I said, "I wish Mom could be here." My father went from smiling and having fun to a very serious face. He got up and said, "I think it's time for us to go to sleep. We should wake up early tomorrow." I was very confused with his reaction. I knew that he was affected by my mother's death, but I still liked remembering her and talking about her. She died years ago when I was still a teenager, in a car crash. I never had a way of dealing with this. I believe this was the moment I created my imaginary friend, Josh. But I decided not to let this moment ruin the trip, so I went to sleep. The next day, my father and I went for an early walk. It's an amazing feeling to walk in the forest in the early morning. The smells are different. The sounds. It's just breathtaking. My father was a little silent today. Very different from the day before. We kept walking some more, but he clearly was affected by something, so I asked him, "Are you all right, Dad?" To which he answered, Yes, I'm just feeling a little under the weather today. Maybe we should go back to camp and rest for a while before we do something else." I agreed with him, and we went back to camp. Later that night, while near the fire, we were silent, just looking at the fire, when I heard a noise from behind my father. I asked him, "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" my father answered. I shook it off and said, It's probably nothing. Forest is full of life. There are noises everywhere." Later inside the tent, while sleeping, I heard something outside. I went to investigate, and when I put my head outside, I saw a man in front of our fire. I frightenedly asked, "Excuse me, sir, do you need help?" In a very familiar voice, the man asked, "Why so formal, Max? Come here and join me. Did you forget about me?" Shocked and frightened, I slowly went near the fire. A feeling of horror took over me as I recognized the man as being Josh, my imaginary friend. I thought he was the fruit of my imagination. There. Don't be frightened. Just sit with me and keep me company, he said. Josh, I said, you remembered. I'm happy to hear, he said with a sinister smile. He added something else. You know what you have to do, Max. After saying these words, he vanished and my father asked from inside the tent. Max, who are you talking to? There's no one here. Go back to sleep. Yes, Dad, I said. The next day, I suggested my father and I go to a familiar place I used to visit in the past. He said yes, and we started walking. I was in a very good mood, as was my father. When we arrived, my father told me, this place looks familiar, but this isn't a good place to hunt and the lake is very far away from here. Why did you want to come here? This was the place where you killed her, I said, and pushed him up against a tree. What are you doing, Max? Let me go, or I swear to God. You'll do what, huh? Beat me like you did every day I lived in that house? You killed Mom with your drinking, and then you beat the shit out of me every single day of my childhood. She's dead because of you. The second I said this, Josh appeared near me and said, Do it, Max. He's guilty. He killed her. He doesn't deserve to live. My father told me I was a good-for-nothing child and that I deserved every beating I took growing up. I smiled and said, That's what I needed to hear. I stuck my hunting knife through his back and watched him die in front of me.
One day I was coming home after going out for groceries. I live in a brand new building with a nice view to a river. As I enter the building, I go directly to the elevator. I live on the 10th floor, so I never take the stairs. When I enter the elevator, I press the button to close the door. Immediately after the doors close, the entire elevator started shaking. I thought it was an earthquake. While it shook, I managed to see the digital floor number indicator, and the numbers were running in a loop. The entire experience was very fast, but it felt like it was taking much more time than it actually did. Then it stopped. After a few seconds of silence, the elevator started going up. I was a little shaken up by the experience, but I just brushed it off. As I am passing floor 6, and just before reaching 7, the elevator stops in between floors. There was no shaking this time, but it was a sudden stop. I waited for a few seconds. I'm not claustrophobic, but I was feeling very uncomfortable with this situation. I decided to press the intercom button and ask for help from the building manager. A few seconds passed and I could hear the manager. He said,
Hello, I see that the elevator stopped when reaching the 7th floor. Are you alright?
Yes, I'm fine. But what's the problem with the elevator?
I don't know yet, but I'll check. The power is obviously on and the other elevator is working normally.
Okay, thank you. I waited for the manager to solve the problem, or at least let me know what was going on. It was just taking so much time. I took my phone out to call my boyfriend and tell him what was happening, but I had no signal. Go figure. That's when I heard the manager's voice through the intercom.
Hello, miss. I've checked the elevator's cables and engine and everything is fine. Still don't know what's causing this.
How can everything be fine if I'm stuck here? I asked. I was getting angry at this point. Why the hell do we have a building manager if he can't solve the building's problems? Then from the intercom, in a very creepy low-toned voice.
Don't get angry, Angela. It makes you look older.
I felt a huge shock. I forgot about the CCTV cameras. I looked up and there it was. He could see me. What the hell? Just unlock the elevator so I can get home.
Wait, Angela. Everything in due time. We are gonna have some fun.
I was now in total panic mode, and I was screaming at the intercom for the guy to just let me out. It felt like the elevator was getting smaller and smaller, and I had no control in the situation. I was trapped.
So, Angela, we'll play a game. You need to find out who I am. I'll give you 3 chances for you to guess. If by the 3rd chance you still don't know who I am, I'll let the elevator go on free fall. Do you understand the rules?
I started cursing at the intercom. Could this be real? He wanted to play games. Who the hell was this freak?
Come on, Angela. What did I say about getting angry? Now, let's start the game. Please say yes if you're ready to start.
I had no other choice. I had to play this sick game. So I said yes.
Good. That's how I like it. So, I'll give you 3 chances, like I said. You can take your time. I'm very patient.
I tried to calm myself down. I needed a clear mind to try and solve this. I had no idea who this man could be. All this time I thought it was the building manager. But now I wasn't sure. It wouldn't make any sense. It would just be too obvious. But I needed to make sure it wasn't him. The building manager's name was Collins, an old sweet man that I had crossed paths with many times before. He never sounded like this, but then again, people can surprise us. So I tried his name. Are you Mr. Collins? The voice from the intercom said.
Wrong!
As he said this, the elevator shook again, and the guy said immediately after,
Don't be afraid. I won't let you fall for now.
I wanted to cry so much, but I couldn't. I had to keep my focus. I needed to find out who the hell this freak was. The building manager was out, so I started thinking about friends and co-workers. But none of these people made sense. I had no enemies. Never had any stalkers in my life. I always lived quietly in my corner. Who could it be? Then I remembered the weird guy that works with me. The guy that is always asking if we're okay around the office, trying to hit on every girl there. Could it be him? I had to try. His name was James, so I said it out loud.
Wrong. Really? James, your coworker? You have 1 more chance, sweetie.
I'd run out of ideas. I had no clue who this person was. This was just a sick game. I sat down, started crying. Couldn't hold it. Then the guy spoke again and said,
Oh, don't cry. You still have 1 more chance. Choose wisely.
Just when I thought there'd be no hope, I heard sirens. I started screaming for help. It was a long shot for anyone to hear me, but I had to try. The guy wasn't speaking anymore. And after a few minutes, the elevator started going down at normal speed. When I reached the 1st floor, I was greeted by a police officer that asked me if I was okay. The officers explained to me what had happened. When the elevator got stuck, it activated a security alarm that was connected to the company that designed it. They tried to contact the building manager, but no one was answering. So they sent a technician. When he arrived at the building, he went to the maintenance room. But before he arrived there, he saw Mr. Collins, the building manager, dead in the hallway. So he immediately called the cops. When the cops arrived, they searched the building. And inside the maintenance room, they found the janitor. Bob was his name. He was the man responsible for the elevator stopping. and he was the voice on the intercom. He was arrested, but this doesn't make me feel safe. Because of what happened, I can't enter an elevator again. I always take the stairs. I'm an 18-year-old girl who shouldn't be at home, alone, babysitting my annoying 6-year-old sister. I should be out having fun with my friends. So, I'm counting down the seconds until my mum gets home from work. I just want to focus on recording my gameplay because I want to be the best gamer, with millions of subs and dollars. I got my friend Matt on speakerphone sitting in the cup holder on my chair while I rack up kills and upgrades. I tell Matt that I can't hang out tonight because I have to babysit my little sister, and he tells me that's okay. We just have to party harder tomorrow to make up for it. I chug down a few gulps of my energy drink, and I tell Matt that we definitely have to party hard after this boring night of being stuck with a little brat. Matt tells me that's why he's happy to be an only child, and I say that I am so glad that my little sis finally went to bed. My phone beeps, and I get a text from my sister, asking me if I'm awake. And I'm thinking, why are you awake? Speak of the tiny devil. She's texting me from her bed that she should be sleeping in, and not bothering me more than she already has. Matt says, that sucks. Call me later when she's passed out for the night. I tell him okay, and I hang up my phone. 2 seconds later, my impatient little sister sends another text, asking me if I'm awake, and I immediately text back, no, I'm asleep like you should be. Now close your eyes and leave me alone. Then the little brat texts back, but I want to tell you something. So I quickly call her and say, no! Now go to bed. Just as I'm about to hang up on her, she says, but I want to tell you something. Oh my god, what? I shout at her, so annoyed and frustrated, wishing so hard that my mum was home so she could deal with the little pest. I like Princess Panda with the pink dress. The little pest tells me, and I tell her, of course you do, because you're 6. I want to dress like Princess Panda, she tells me, as if I care. Tell Mom, not me. Now go to sleep. I tell her, hoping that she'll hit her head on the bedpost and pass out until my mum gets home. Then she asks me, when is Mommy going to be here? Not soon enough, I say, and I tell her to stop asking stupid questions and to close her eyes and go to sleep. She says she will, but then she asks me to read her a story, and I tell her no. Then she says, I like when you read 'cause you do the funny voices and Teddy doesn't do that. I tell her, I'm not reading you anything, so your stupid teddy bear will have to read to you. Now stop talking and texting me. I don't know why Mum bought a dumb baby like you a phone. She tells me that I'm not being nice, and I tell her that I'm not nice, so hopefully she won't want to talk or tag along with me ever again. Then she says she wants me to go to the magic place with her, and I tell her to leave me alone and that I don't care about her stupid imaginary stuff. Then she tells me that the magic place is real and it's not far away. Everything she says sounds like screeching static in my ears, so I shout at her to go to sleep. Then the static clears when she says, the magic place is in the attic. Teddy told me that's where he lives. Teddy said he's always watching us through the holes in the ceiling. I'm so frustrated that I stand up and walk out of my room. I shout down the hallway towards her room. I don't care what your stupid teddy bear does. Then my sister says, Teddy is not a bear. I walk into her room and see a big, burly, hairy, middle-aged man with a large, scruffy beard and dirty, torn clothes. He's holding a knife and my little sister's hand as they walk into a large hole carved into the back of her closet.
Me and my dad have always been into dirt bikes and off-roading vehicles. Almost every night you could find us on our phones looking on Craigslist and various other websites for a good deal. One night we both had the idea of looking on Letgo, so quickly we both downloaded the app. While we were both searching for a motorcycle, my dad stumbled across an amazing steal. It was a 250cc dirt bike for only $750, which is really good considering that this brand usually went for $1,500. My dad offered the man $600 instead, and without hesitation, the man accepted, which worried me. I told my dad that it didn't seem right as the price was really low and he didn't seem to care that he wanted a bargain, and that there were no visible problems with the bike. Though I tried to talk my dad out of it, his heart was set in stone and he went that night to go pick up the bike. I came along with him. On the original listing, the address for the pickup was just down the road, about 5 minutes away. But the seller messaged us and told us to meet him in a parking lot about 20 minutes away, which at the time we didn't seem to take note of this. As we were driving out to the location, things got weird. The man now changed his mind on the location and told us to meet him at his house, in a part of town that isn't the best, which is about an hour away from our house. This is where I started to worry, but as my dad was trying to save money, we went anyway. Once we arrived at his neighborhood, we quickly realized that there were no street lights and it was about 10 p.m. We were driving through the neighborhood looking for the address, but the house number simply didn't exist. It seemed that it was skipped. So my dad, being determined, he parked and started messaging the seller. Deep down inside, I was freaking out. Once we were parked, two sketchy-looking vans filled with men pulled up, one in front of us and one behind us. I quickly realized what was happening. My dad didn't. My heart sunk as I saw the doors open and sketchy-looking men dressed all in black emerged and were staring at us as if they were planning something. My dad was still messaging the seller. The text went something like this. Dad, hey, we're here at the location, but we can't find the house number. Seller, I know. I gave you a fake address. I'll be out there right now. Once I saw the text, I put my hand on my dad's arm and said, this isn't right. It's sketchy. I think this is a setup. That was when my dad came to his senses and we left. We pulled out of the neighborhood and thought we were safe, but one of the cars that was parked next to us in the neighborhood started following us. Luckily, it was a long drive home and a lot of time to lose them. We were driving for what seemed like forever and we finally lost the car, I hoped. I explained to my dad that it was a setup and they were probably going to rob us or even worse. Luckily, we got home safely, but it could have ended badly. The next night, I saw on the news that a man was robbed and killed while buying a motorcycle off of the same app at the same location. As cliche as it sounds, I genuinely felt sick when I heard that, as I felt as that could have been us. We could have been killed and robbed. Ever since that incident, I deleted that app and haven't touched it since.
My name is Camilla. I live with my mother. My father, after the car crash, left. It's just me and her, my beloved mother. Lately she's been sad and looking very unhappy. A few weeks ago, like I said, we were involved in a car crash. Luckily, we were all okay. A few cuts and bruises, but okay. Emotionally, I cannot say the same. Seeing my father abandoning us was very devastating to both me and Mother. After he left, she started forgetting doing things around the house. There would be days that she wouldn't cook for us. I could help. I didn't mind. She was also drinking more wine than usual. I could have sworn there were days I felt she didn't even notice me. I would pass by her in the morning, and she would say nothing. She looked sleepy and tired. I found some pills she was taking before sleeping. I didn't like those. They made her sleep all the morning. One night I woke up to go for a glass of water, and as I walked the upstairs corridor, I could swear she was crying in the bedroom. I wanted to knock on the door to see if she was all right, but I was afraid of seeing her like this. I think she was like this because of Dad. She was always grabbing a picture of the three of us and looking at it for long periods of time. I blame my father for leaving us. We were so happy, the three, together. I decided I was going to call my father and tell him to come home. That Mother needed him, that I needed him. Yes, we are going to be a family again. I picked up the phone to make the call, but as I do it, I see Mother going to the door. I put the phone down and went after her. I see her getting into the car, so I enter the car as well and went with her. I tried to ask her where we were going, but to no avail. She just drove. So I sat in silence and waited to see what was our destination. A few minutes passed and we arrived somewhere. She parked the car and got out. Again, I went after her, following close behind. We approached an iron gate and walked to it and kept walking inside. When we arrived inside, I saw that we were in a graveyard. Why were we in a graveyard? She kept walking until she approached one of the graves. I was behind her, so I couldn't see the name engraved. I walked to the side, and when I saw the name on the grave, a feeling of desperation and pain took control of me. The name was of my father, Peter. I couldn't believe what I was watching. My mother lied to me? He was dead? I looked at my mother, and I see that she's not looking at my father's grave now. She was looking at the one on the side. I looked at it and saw my name, Camilla, and a picture of me.